This 500,000-ton tower is swaying a full meter above the clouds right now, silent and unnoticed. Inside, an executive pours black coffee without spilling a drop. Watch what's actually happening behind the polished walls. 828 meters above the Dubai desert, the Burj Khalifa is slowly drifting across the sky. In a strong storm, its crown traces an invisible circle nearly 1.5 meters wide overhead. A pendulum of steel and glass, weighing more than the Great Pyramid of Giza, quietly leaning against the sky. On the 148th floor, a paper cup of black coffee sits still on a polished desk. It does not tremble. It does not ripple. It does not move at all. Yet the tower breathes. The paradox is this. The sway is not a flaw. The sway is the safety feature engineers designed deliberately. The stillness you feel is a controlled illusion, one of the greatest engineering deceptions ever built into architecture.
To understand this illusion, we must first understand the era that created it, a century racing skyward relentlessly. Since the year 2000, more than 200 supertall towers have risen above 300 meters worldwide. A category that barely existed a generation ago now defines the skylines of the 21st century's greatest cities. Dubai, Shanghai, New York, Shenzhen, Kuala Lumpur, a global race written in polished steel and reflective glass. But above roughly 150 meters, something profound changes in the fundamental physics of every tall building. Gravity is no longer the main enemy engineers must defeat. Wind is. And wind behaves nothing like weight. Above that threshold, wind loads dominate every single calculation an engineer will ever make on the drafting board. The structure must carry itself, yes, but more importantly, it must survive the endless pressure of the open sky. And the sky at that altitude is never calm. It pushes, pulls, and hums against every pane of glass. It circles around corners in invisible spirals, testing every joint, every anchor, every hidden weld inside the tower. What actually determines the design isn't the strength of steel or the price of concrete. It's a number absurdly small. 15 milli-g, 15 thousandths of gravity's pull. That's when the human inner ear begins to notice something is wrong. Cross that line and tenants feel nausea. Cross it further and hanging lamps begin to swing across ceilings. Cross it further still and glass panels crack, elevator rails warp, and lawsuits arrive faster than the wind itself. Every truss, every damper, every twist in a skyscraper's silhouette is aimed at one target, outsmarting the inner ear. Keep the acceleration of the top floors below the whisper the inner ear can detect. That is the entire game. And yet the tallest towers of our century break every rule that engineers of earlier generations once obeyed. To see why, we have to go back. Back when architects believed the answer was simple. Make it stiff, make it strong, make it refuse to move. In 1973, a mirrored monolith opened in Boston, the John Hancock Tower. 60 stories of blue reflective glass, the most beautiful skin ever hung on a skyscraper. And then the panels began to fall. Not one, not two. Hundreds of enormous sheets tumbling into the streets below. Glass shattered across sidewalks closed for months. The building swayed in a way its designers had never predicted. The glass could not follow the motion. The tower moved, the skin could not. Engineers had built for strength. They had not built for behavior. And that single oversight would rewrite the physics of every skyscraper that followed. In the summer of 1978, a young engineering student in New Jersey wrote a letter that changed architecture forever. Her professor forwarded it to William LeMessurier, the structural engineer of the newly finished Citicorp Center in Manhattan. LeMessurier ran the numbers. His 59-story tower, balanced on 4 enormous stilts, was calculated for one type of wind. But quartering winds, winds striking the corner instead of the face, had never been tested by his team. They doubled the load on the bolted joints. one major hurricane could collapse the tower onto a crowded neighborhood. In secret, throughout a summer of hurricane season, welders worked through the night, sealing every critical bolted joint. New York did not learn what had almost happened for another 20 years. The rigid design assumption had failed. The lesson was uncomfortable. Wind is not a static force. It does not simply push. It resonates, it pulses, it plays a building like a tuning fork. The fix, engineers realized, was not stronger steel. It was surrender. Here is the physics they had ignored. When wind flows around a tall tower, it does not simply pass by. It sheds tiny whirlpools, one after another, first on one side, then the other. Engineers call them vortices. A trailing wake of alternating spirals is called the Kármán vortex street, named for aerodynamicist Fyodor von Kármán. Each vortex stacks the building sideways as it releases. A small pull left, then right, then left again. Left, right, in a rhythm as steady as a metronome, pulsing against the steel structure above. If that rhythm matches the tower's natural sway frequency, the motions add together, resonating like a tuning fork. Every push in time with the swing pushes harder. A child on a swing, a wine glass shattering to soprano. A tower rocking itself into failure. Resonance, silent and catastrophic, waiting patiently for the next matched wind. Now imagine the tower as a cantilever beam, a vertical diving board planted deep in the ground below. Push the tip, the beam bends. Release, and it springs back. It has a natural rhythm measured in seconds. For a supertall, that period is often between 6 and 10 seconds per full sway of the structure. Winds gust at intervals close to that same range, and this is the trap engineers must confront. Rigidity does not save the tower. Rigidity sharpens the resonance. Stiffer beams ring louder, like tighter drums. What absorbs the energy is not stiffness at all. The secret lies in flexibility, controlled, engineered flexibility. And so the industry settled on a rule for horizontal drift at the very top of the tower. The tip may drift by no more than 1/500th of the tower's total height, and no further.
For an 800-meter tower, that is roughly 1.5 meters of allowable sway. A number that would have horrified engineers a century ago. Today, it is simply a design target. But here's the thing. Physics alone cannot hide a swaying floor from the sensitivity of the human ear. Because here is the real problem. A tower that sways 1 meter over 10 seconds is entirely safe. But a tower that sways that same distance over only 3 seconds makes its occupants violently ill. It is not the distance that the inner ear detects. It is the acceleration itself, the change.
The rate at which the movement changes. Slow, smooth arcs feel like nothing at all to us, but sharp, sudden shifts feel like a full-blown earthquake rippling through the entire building beneath your feet. And so the question shifted entirely. How do you slow the sway? How do you smother resonance? How do you make a 500,000-ton building move gently, like a metronome soaked in honey? The naive answer is to make walls thicker, pour more concrete, weld more steel. Wrong. Wrong at every scale. Thicker walls raise the weight, the cost, the sail area, and the resonant forces the tower must carry. Beyond a certain height, more mass makes the problem worse, not better. The secret lies near the crown. The real reason modern towers stand quietly in storms bears a name almost too poetic: a tuned mass damper. Imagine a golden sphere, 730 tons of steel plates suspended by cables inside Taipei 101. When a typhoon strikes and the tower leans east, the sphere by its inertia lags behind, swinging west. When the tower springs back, the sphere continues east, pulling the tower gently in the opposite direction. It is a pendulum tuned to the tower's natural period. Not to stop the sway, to cancel it. Visitors watch it swing behind glass on the 88th floor, a golden heart out of phase with the storm. Around the tower's exterior, engineers added a second trick, aeroelastic shaping, sculpted directly into the building's skin. The corners of Taipei 101 are notched and chamfered. The Burj Khalifa spirals upward in 3 petals, each floor slightly offset from the one below. This confuses the vortex street. Whirlpools no longer form in unison. They stagger, they break, they find no rhythm. The wind still blows, but no longer sings the tower's note. And yet one tower took this idea further than physics thought possible, pushing shape and inertia to the limit. Before we reach it, look at the rest of the arsenal. The tuned pendulum is only the first secret machine. In Philadelphia, atop the Comcast Center, engineers installed a sloshing water tank, 300 tons in a shallow basin. When the tower leans, the water leans opposite, its wave slapping the far wall in perfect counter rhythm. Cheaper than a steel pendulum, silent, invisible, effective. Other towers use active mass dampers instead, computer-controlled slabs. Not passive weights, but slabs riding on hydraulic actuators. Sensors detect the beginning of a sway within milliseconds. A processor calculates the exact push required. Pistons drive the mass in the perfect direction at the perfect moment. The building fights itself in real time, thousands of times per storm. Inside, engineers weave outrigger trusses. Enormous diagonal braces reach from the central core to the perimeter columns, tying the structure into one behaving body.
Without them, the outer columns pull independently, and the tower twists like a wrung towel under wind. With them, the load spreads evenly, and the sway becomes a slow, coordinated bow across every floor. And on the outside, the geometry itself becomes a weapon. Twisted silhouettes, taper profiles, setbacks fooling the wind. Notches trip the vortices before they can gather strength. Every angle a calculation, every curve a defense. Before a single beam is welded, a scale model, often 1:500, enters a wind tunnel. In Guelph, Canada, or Miyazaki, Japan, models are blasted with air for weeks. Pressure sensors record every gust.
Engineers redesign corners. They tilt setbacks by half a degree. They add fins. They subtract them again. They chase a number, a tiny acceleration figure, driving it down below the threshold of human perception. Every silent floor hides a machine fighting the sky, invisible weapons in a war against the wind. Now we reach the tower that pushed this further than anyone thought possible. Shanghai Tower, 632 meters, the second tallest building on Earth, and it does not stand straight. Its glass skin twists as it climbs. From base to crown, the corners rotate a full third of a circle, 120 degrees of torsion. To the eye, it appears sculptural. To the wind, it is a knife, breaking vortex streets before they form. Wind tunnel tests confirm the reduction, 24% less lateral load than a straight prism of the same height. That saves 32,000 tons of structural steel. An entire fleet of skyscrapers, invisible within the sculpted exterior. But even a twisted tower needs a heart. On the 125th floor, 1,000 tons hangs suspended. Not swinging on cables, levitating. Copper plates line the walls around the mass, forming an invisible magnetic cage. As the tower sways, the pendulum drifts. Its motion through copper induces electrical currents inside the surrounding plates. Those currents produce opposing magnetic fields. The pendulum decelerates silently through the invisible drag of electromagnetic induction alone. An eddy current damper. No moving parts, no friction, no wear. A machine made of pure physics, humming beneath skyline. In the summer of 2015, Typhoon Chan-hom struck the coast of eastern China with brutal, sustained force. Winds above 150 km per hour hit Shanghai Tower head-on. Sensors recorded top-of-tower drift exceeding 1 meter. Inside, the offices were silent. Wine glasses did not ripple, papers did not slide, elevators kept running. Only a laser interferometer calibrated to millimeters could see what was happening. The tower moved, the people did not. And yet the most dangerous force at that altitude isn't wind at all. It's something far more elusive above. It is us, our bodies, our perception. The fundamental limit on every supertall isn't structural, it's biological. The steel could take more, the concrete could take more. What cannot is the fluid inside the human ear. Tiny hairs translate motion into meaning. The vestibular system decides unconsciously whether the world around us is safe. Engineers don't design for wind, they design for the inner ear. This is why acceleration matters more than displacement. A tower drifting 1 meter over 8 seconds produces acceleration of 5,000ths of gravity, below the threshold. Undetectable to almost everyone. That same meter compressed into 2 seconds would be an amusement park ride. Motion sickness. The engineering trick is to move the tower slowly and smoothly. The dampers stretch out the sway in time. They lower peak acceleration by half. The building lets the wind work, but takes twice as long. In that stretched time, the human ear hears nothing. This is the quiet miracle of the modern supertall. The tower moves, so you never notice. Dampers, shaping, outriggers, twist, they aren't there to stop motion, they're there to hide it. To take a violent shove from the sky, translated through steel and inertia, into a movement so gentle you can pour coffee on the 100th floor and never see the surface tremble. The next generation of towers won't just sway, they'll think. Subscribe to explore how our world is built.
Because right now, north of Jeddah, a tower is rising that will pass 1 kilometer in height. Jeddah Tower, 1,000 meters of concrete and steel, the first building on Earth to break a kilometer. And its dampers will not be passive pendulums. They will be adaptive, driven by artificial intelligence embedded within. AI reads wind patterns arriving from far out in the Red Sea, predicting vortex frequencies 6 seconds ahead. Hydraulic masses will pre-position before the gust ever arrives, a tower that flinches before it is struck. Beyond that, materials themselves are changing. Carbon fiber cores, 5 times stiffer per gram than steel, reinforce experimental towers. Self-healing concrete, laced with bacteria that grow limestone into fresh cracks, is being tested inside European laboratories. Sensors woven into the structure whisper along fiber optic threads, forming a nervous system reporting fatigue in real time. A skyscraper aware of its own body.
Yet this is happening as the climate is changing beneath our feet. Warmer oceans are feeding more intense hurricanes, jet streams are shifting, the wind itself is not what it was. Cities that once expected a Category 3 storm are being asked to prepare for a Category 5 instead. The next generation of towers must be designed for a sky that has not yet arrived over us. And the frontier is no longer merely to survive that sky. The frontier now is to predict it, to sense the pressure drop of a distant front, to brace for a storm still an hour away. Kilometer-tall cities are already looming on the horizon. Concept studies for 2,000-meter towers have already begun in engineering labs. Vertical cities housing 100,000 people, each building itself a district, each stacked floor its own neighborhood. With every 100 meters we climb higher into the sky, a new invisible enemy waits above the clouds. Thinner air, colder gradients, ice loads accumulating on cables. Lightning currents striking 10 times more frequently up there. The next century of engineering will be written not in the streets below, but high in the sky. For now, on this quiet Tuesday afternoon, the executive on the 148th floor lifts his coffee. The tower beneath him leans a full meter sideways into the relentless desert wind sweeping across all Dubai. A golden sphere, or a suspended slab, or a slow tide of water moves in silent opposition below. The glass panels hold firm. The elevators run smoothly.
The desk stays perfectly level to his focused eye. He has no idea that a violent storm has arrived. He has no idea the building is dancing. That is precisely the point. That is the entire discipline of supertall structural engineering distilled to one truth. To turn a battle between 500,000 tons of steel and the raging atmosphere of a planet into a stillness so complete that a single drop of coffee stays exactly where it was carefully poured.
If these engineering solutions surprised you, this channel holds more films on how humanity quietly outwits nature itself. From bridges that breathe with the wind to massive dams that rewrite the ancient courses of powerful rivers. The coming era of kilometer-tall cities where entire populations live above the clouds is a story already waiting. Subscribe to continue the exploration of our engineered world. The sky